I've been reading this book by Uncle Angus. It's Jesus Enough. This is one of my favorite books, and whenever I can, I always revisit it. And there's a quote that he has on here that I just wanted to share with you guys. So basically, this is a book within a book. So he's quoting a book by Billy Graham, who is possibly one of the greatest evangelists of our time. And Billy Graham's book is called Just As I Am. This is what Uncle Angus says. He writes that he had to live, but rather, he writes that if he had to live his life over again, he would speak less, study more, spend more time with his family. He wondered whether all the engagements he had accepted were really necessary. Graham speaks about the importance of spiritual maturity, growing closer to Jesus and becoming more like him. He says he would spend more time in prayer and meditation in God's holy word, not only for sermon preparation but also for personal edification, and spend more time in fellowship with other Christians. So these are the words that Billy Graham shared at his later stages. There's so much wisdom that we get when people get to their later years. And I also wanted to share something that we have here from the Bible. This is the last week of Jesus's life here on earth. And it's very key to listen and pinpoint at some of these things because they are very important. Because when somebody knows that they're at the end of their life, they share vital information. So it's important for us to study these words of Jesus. That what did Jesus say in the last week of his life? Just as much as we are learning here from Billy Graham, that he's saying, okay, now that I'm now older, I'm wondering were all these engagements really important? Now I hope I could have spent more time in God's word. I hope I could spend more time with my family. I wanted to study more. I want to speak less. These are lessons that we can learn from somebody who is at a later stage in their lives. And these words also are very important that Jesus shares in the last week of his life. We'll start off with Mark 11:17. It says, "And as he taught them, he said, 'Is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers.'" Other version says a den of thieves. I want us to note the key word for us today will be a prayer for all nations. For nations. That the heart of Jesus is what? Is nations. And after that we go to Matthew 28, 19, 20. This is now after Jesus had now appeared. These are the last words that I recorded in the Bible in Matthew 28, and it says, "Go and make disciples of all nations." That at this later stage, Jesus is having an emphasis on nations. This is the heart of Jesus Christ. And if we are here as ambassadors and his disciples, we are going to have to fulfill this great commission that he has bestowed on us. That the focus is nations. That don't focus on yourself, because the reality of today's life and world is that it's about self. It's so focused on yourself. Though even your prayers become about yourself. But Jesus is saying, when you pray, I want you to pray for the nations. And I also want you to go out and minister and preach and make disciples of all nations. So that is the word that I want us to keep in mind today. That we focus on the nations, that we think of the nations. And when we think of nations, let's not think, oh, I need to go grab my passport and start going out and minister. Start reaching out to your family members. Start reaching out to those in your sphere of influence, your colleagues at work, your colleagues in your social club. Start reaching out to those, your followers on social media. Start reaching out to those. Because the truth of the matter is that people are going to hell because we did not share with them the good news. We withheld this good news that we have. And nations are perishing because believers are silent in this season, because we are so scared to offend people that we just, okay, no, let me just keep this good news to myself. And I want to encourage you today that Jesus gave us this great commission. I remember on a previous podcast we said, it's not the great suggestion, but it's the great commission. That we always remember and be reminded that there are nations out there that we have been called for. So let us remember the nations and let us go and make disciples of all nations.